Hello, and welcome back to MysHistory. I'm Rhonda, and this is where I talk about historical mysteries with the subgenre of fact or fairy tale. If that sounds like something that you might be interested in, then please consider subscribing, because it's fun. I hope you're all doing really, really well. I found a case, another 70 plus year old case. This time, it's out of the United Kingdom. Was it a ritualistic killing? Was she a witch? Was she a spy? Who put Bella in the Wych-Elm? This case dates back to 1943. Specifically, April 18th, 1943. It was on this date when four young boys, Robert Hart, Thomas Willett, Bob Farmer, and Fred Payne were out looking for bird eggs, which was considered a reasonable employment at the time, even if it was poaching. They were in Hagley Wood, which was part of the Hagley estate that belonged to Lord Cobham. Technically, they were trespassing. And it was here that they would find a large wych-elm tree, which they thought would be a good place to go and search for a bird nest. It'd be Bob Farmer, who was said to have been the smallest of the group, and he would climb up into the tree to search for a bird nest, but instead, he found a human skull. Initially thinking it was an animal skull, he picked it up and then noticed teeth and human hair, and knowing that they were there illegally, he put the skull back where he found it, climbed out of the tree, told his friends. They were all sworn to secrecy, likely because they didn't want to get in trouble with the police for trespassing. The secret was not kept for long, as the youngest of the group, Thomas Willett, had a crisis of conscience, and he'd tell his father, who would alert the police, who would go and search the area around the wych-elm tree. They would arrive and confirm, yep, that's a skull. But there was so much more. Inside the trunk of the tree, they found the almost complete skeleton of a human, a shoe, a gold wedding ring, and fragments of clothing, but the left hand was missing. There were still tufts of hair on the skull and some unique dental features that they were hopeful would lead to the identification of the skull. They would also find a small piece of taffeta stuck in the mouth. They would find bones scattered around the tree and would collect them, and that would turn out to be the complete left hand of the body. So remember the Somerton Man and the Istall woman cases that I talked about last summer? Remember that the labels were cut out of all of their clothing? This is very much the case here as well, with the labels having been cut out of the clothing of the skeleton that was found. I'm starting to sense a theme here. The remains would be sent to a pathologist for autopsy, and it would be medical examiner Professor James Webster who would discover a number of clues regarding the remains. He believed the skeleton to be that of a woman, and that she had died approximately 18 months prior to the discovery of the body in the tree, right around October 1941, most likely. He further believed that she was killed close to the tree, as the only way that they would have been able to fit her body inside of the trunk was while it was still warm. Morbid and creepy, I know. Webster further stated that the woman was probably approximately around 35 years of age at the time of her death. She had light brown hair, as evidenced by the remaining hair strands on the skull. and she measured about 5 feet tall. He further deduced that she had given birth at least once, and her front teeth were quite crooked. He would rule out suicide due to the fact that there was a piece of taffeta found in her mouth, and so he was of the belief that she was perhaps strangled. This, along with the fact that she was stuffed into the trunk of a tree, really kind of significantly, I can say words, pointed to the fact that somebody else was responsible for the death of this woman. There was one account that stated that the boys were responsible for the piece of fabric stuck in her mouth, the story being that they had wrapped a piece of fabric around a stick and then poked it into the skull to get it out of the tree. Is it possible that they may have messed around with the skull? Sure. I can see that happening before they realized what they were holding. You know, well, look at this. What is it? You know, I could see that. And the teenage boys, I can't imagine they were much different in 1943 than what they are today. Of course, they didn't have cell phones. They weren't filming it. But can you imagine finding out that it's a human skull? So it's unlikely that this is the case, as boys of that time weren't typically running around with pieces of fabric stuffed in their pockets. More specifically, fabrics that were solely used at that time for ladies' nightgowns and petticoats. Investigators were hopeful that the teeth might lead to the identification of the body in the tree. Today, we rely on forensic dentistry, but that didn't exist in 1943. Shocking. As such, the police would search dental records throughout the United Kingdom in hopes to find a match. However, there weren't many dental records that existed with the same unique pattern of the overlapping front teeth, which would be a setback. Due to this, there were some who believed that the woman was not even from the UK at all. There would be many theories as to who she really was and what may have happened to her. 6 months after the discovery of the body, graffiti would start to appear around Birmingham reading, quote, "Who put Lubella down the Wych-Elm?" and, quote, "Hagley Wood Bella." Both of these messages seem to have been written by the same person. More graffiti would show up with whoever was responsible for putting it out there settling on one question, quote, "Who put Bella in the Wych-Elm?" So this would lead investigators to start searching missing person reports for anybody with the name of like Lubella, Bella, or some other combination with Bella in the name. And there are those who think that the messages may have been written as a joke, or that perhaps whoever wrote the messages knew what happened. A respected anthropologist at that time, a Professor Margaret Murray, thought that the mystery surrounding the body in the Wych-Elm bore all the signs of a black magic execution. It was Jimmy Page. She would call it the Hand of Glory execution, wherein the person executed was ritually very powerful and would therefore have to be enclosed in the trunk of a tree where it would be unable to haunt the people that killed them. Another of her theories was that there was an alleged witches' coven in Hagley Wood. Rumors were swirling around about this coven in Hagley Wood. Murray was convinced that the woman was killed by her coven after a witch trial. Police were never able to find any evidence to corroborate Margaret's findings. In 1941, a German intelligence officer by the name of Joseph Jacobs was captured near Hagley Wood in January. He had parachuted into the area where he was supposed to make contact with a woman by the name of Clara, not saying that name, stating that she had been a German cabaret singer and actress prior to being recruited by the Third Reich. Jacobs was too dangerous to be released, and as such, he would be the last person to die in the Tower of London. Death by firing squad. Investigators did wonder about the validity of his story, and they would research Clara. She was a real person. She was a cabaret singer and an actress, and she performed in both Germany and England. She would have been 35 in 1941, the presumed age of the Bella in the Wych-Elm tree, and Clara seemed to have mysteriously vanished in 1941. No credits in music or movies, and so it was considered a pretty strong possibility that she was the woman in the tree. Upon further investigation, though, it would be learned that Clara was actually 6 feet tall and died in Germany in 1942. So that was another dead end. Other theories would include a sex worker who came forward in 1944 contacting the authorities in Birmingham, stating that she worked with another sex worker by the name of Bella, or Lou Bella, who could have possibly been the Bella in the tree. In 1953, a woman named Anna would report that a Dutch woman by the name of Clara Bella Dronkers was murdered by a German spy ring consisting of a British officer, a Dutchman, and a music hall artist for, quote, knowing too much. This would be a full decade after the discovery of the Bella in the tree. The woman would contact a local newspaper insisting that she had information about the death of Bella. She would be interviewed by the police, and her story would be that Bella had been a German spy. To the police, this seemed plausible. There were many munitions factories around Hagley Wood that were prime targets for spies during the Second World War. The media would pick up on the story, and with the Cold War in full effect and on everyone's mind in 1953, espionage seemed quite possible. Police were unable to find any evidence to verify Anna's story to actually solve the case. Also in 1953, a woman by the name of Una Masop would come forward with a story in which she claimed that her ex-husband Jack confessed to family members that he and a Dutchman named Van Holt had put the woman in the tree. As the story goes, Jack and Van Holt had been drinking at a pub near Hagley, and they would meet a woman who became quite intoxicated, and she passed out while they were driving to another location. So Jack claimed that the two men put the woman in the tree, hoping that when she woke up the next morning, she would, realize the errors of her ways of drinking, or something equally odd. Jack would be confined to a mental hospital due to recurring dreams of a woman staring at him from inside of a tree. He would pass away before the woman's body was found in 1943, so there was no chance to actually talk to him to corroborate the story. So, I don't know, maybe it was just the fanciful musings of an ex-wife, possibly scorned. Present day, the identity of the Wych-Elm Bella is still unknown, but we may know what she might have looked like thanks to Caroline Wilkinson. Caroline was tasked with rebuilding the face of Richard III after his remains were found under a Leicester car park. So now she has recreated the face of Bella. She is a professor of craniofacial facial identification at Dundee University, and she had to use photos of the skull from that time because she couldn't use the actual skull because the police lost the skull, probably in the chaos of the Second World War aftermath, Cold War. What are your thoughts? Was she a sex worker and stuffed in a tree? Victim of a satanic, ritualistic black magic killing? A spy? I'll link the cases of Somerton Man and the Istall woman in the description box simply because there seems to be so much in common with the three cases as far as identity, how they died, and the lack of labels in their clothing. Interesting. Don't forget to like, comment, and click the subscribe button to be notified every time I post a new video, which is either a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday, depending on what I'm filming. Until we meet again, stay safe and don't go poking skulls with sticks in trees.